I'm tired, bro. Hi pals, it's me again, Artie, the multiply disabled and multiply marginalised human being. Hi, how's it going? My last chronic illness support group meeting gave me a lot of moods, vibes, things I wanted to talk about in regards to communicating as a disabled person. And because I am multiply disabled, I have a lot of obstacles when it comes to communicating with people. The reason why I have a YouTube and a blog are because those modes of communications are so vastly different and can do different things for me. So on my blog, it can be a lot more eloquent, sound more intelligente, and kind of be taken more seriously and use a bit more educated and complicated terminology. Here, I'm a bumbling band of buffoons. Baboons? Bumbling band of baboons. That's what I am. And I show a lot of emotion and have a lot of comedic timing, and I can have fun with editing when I have fun with editing. Otherwise I hate it. And I feel like different topics lend better to these different modes of communication online. But in real life, it's really difficult because as well, even with a video, I can edit things out. I can jump back in editing and just clarify things that I've said. You know, like I can still edit what I've said and improve clarity. In person, cannot fucking do that, can I? So we have my handy iPad with a selection of prompts I'm going to try and discuss, and there's this really great Twitter thread that I literally saw a few hours before filming, that I just felt was so me. I felt like it was something I need to add here and share with you. So communication is hard when you're disabled. Communicating your needs, I hate it. So one of the biggest things for me is email versus phone. So like lots of places like call us if you have any questions. And it's like I'm not very good on the phone, and I'm especially not very good if I have to leave a voicemail message. In person, I'm quite disjointed. I'm quite slow at producing the words that I'm looking for. And again, I can cut out a lot of my pauses and breaks in videos, but in real life I can't do that. So I'm like kind of slow, especially when I'm trying to remember important information. So a really good example of this was trying to ring my vascular surgeon, or like at least his secretary, to leave a message to ask if I could be referred to the vascular physio. It went a bit like this. Hi, it's Artie Carden. I'm the one with Takayasu's. I believe I'm under Dr. So-and-so. I have just recently seen the musculoskeletal physio, and he said he can't really help me, but that vascular physio might be able to. So I was hoping if Dr. So-and-so would be able to refer me there. I don't have my NHS number on me. I can't find it anywhere as I was rustling through like sheets. And then the voicemail just ended, and I was like, cool, that'll do. And my mum then was like, did you leave your NHS number? No. Did you leave a phone number? No. I hate leaving voicemail messages because of that, but also like phone calls are not always great, but they are better than nothing. Most of the time, if I have requests or a selection of questions, or like if I'm asking for results, I try to email people. So I'm very lucky. I have access to my IBD team's email. They're not very fucking good, but at least I have their email to tell them they're not very good at it. I have my rheumatologist's email. I email like plenty of stuff all the time. I sometimes get really fast responses from my rheumatologist because of this. I also have my new OT's email, and like because I managed to email her this long list of things that, you know, my hypermobile hands affect my life, she changed our next appointment from a video call into like an in-person call so we can do some measuring for better fitting compression gloves and do some like strength measuring machine things to finally get some details on that, and so she can see me and feel my hands in person to be like better informed on what the fuck's going on, because she thought my issues were more related to hobbies rather than just everything in my entire fucking life. So like, because I was able to send her this long list of things that I struggle with because hands, she got the picture. In a phone call, I just struggle to organise my thoughts, especially if there's like new information presented to me that I wasn't expecting, wasn't prepared for, you know, and I'm just like, fuck, wait, what? So most of the time I email people in advance or right after phone calls, or like a few days after a phone call, with like clarity questions. That's also how I just kind of communicate with most people. Anyone I'm working with on projects is by email or like direct message, because at least I have like a physical thing to refer back to, and I see their wording as well, because sometimes with communication, because I have this issue, many other people have this issue, we sometimes use the words that we don't mean, or like we use the word that's like closest to the word we mean, and it's not quite correct. So at least seeing it, I can be like, hey, you said this, do you mean this or this? You know, like I have like a trauma response of like, I have to analyze every single thing people say to me, especially neurotypicals, especially doctors and like medical professionals, because I have not been believed for many years when it comes to health and medical related things. People have constantly ridiculed me for saying things wrong or not giving me the chance to clarify what I mean. And ADHD has just told me that that's the end of the thought, because I now don't remember what my next point was. There we go. I also tend to ask if I need a phone call being made to like make an appointment. I tend to ask my mum, sometimes my gran if my mum's not around, because I can't make these phone calls very often. Like on the very rare occasion I have been able to make these phone calls, but it's normally because I've written up like a script. This is who I am, this is what I'm looking for, this is who I'm looking to speak to, this is what the problem is, can you help me, do I need to be booked in? And sometimes it's just easier, faster and quicker to be done. Faster and quicker are the same thing, by somebody else. I have a long list of medical related issues that I've been needing to deal with, and I haven't done it because most of them involve calling people. So I have been slowly getting through it though. We are slowly getting there, but it is sort of like a, I just want to die. And yeah, I've said this like a bunch already, but like I write notes, even if I'm speaking to someone in person, if I've got an appointment with someone, no matter what it's for, whether it's medical or not, I will have a list of my questions, random thoughts I've had that I would just like to clarify with whoever it is, you know, things like that. And again, ADHD brain is like, peace out, bye. But like, yeah, like I cannot get through any communication with people outside of like my immediate friendship and family groups without rehearsing everything. this next point is what's the word I want? So because of the trauma I've been through in regards to communication going wrong pretty much constantly my entire life, having an abusive family member or two, and being medically gaslit for most of my life, I did used to have this trauma response of over explaining myself, and I still do it, but not in the same sort of capacity. So instead of just saying, like, for example, I need a day off work today. Why? I want the day off, you know. I have a right as a employee to have days off work, and you are not entitled to. Why? I would have done and have done like over explained why I need that day off when it is absolutely not somebody's business. This was also something I forgot to mention in the video, but something I did mention in my chronic illness group meeting was that when it comes to workplaces in England, when I was working jobs, that if you needed a day off sick, you had to explain why, and you had to tell them what was wrong with you. So like, I feel like a mixture of my trauma response is because of being constantly misunderstood, but also just like capitalism forcing you to disclose things that like are just not appropriate to disclose. Why do you have to explain to people why you took a day off sick from work? Okay, I have raging diarrhea. Did you really want to know that? And you couldn't use certain words and phrases. Like, I believe things like flu-like symptoms, you know, like there were certain phrases you weren't even allowed to use. You had to be like really specific of why you took the day off. And sometimes, you know, if you've taken a day off because of mental illness and just needing some fucking mental health time and space from work, you either have to lie or you have to tell them that. And it's just another one of those like gross ableist things that happens because capitalism. I fucking hate working, so I don't anymore. But also I'm really disabled and no one will fucking hire me, so. I think my last job I had, I was going through diagnosis for Crohn's at the time, and I think instead of just saying, hey, I just need to swap the days I'm working on that week, you know, I need this particular day free, I can't come into work, I would explain like, I have this procedure with this at here for this, so I can't come in for these days or that day, whatever. You know, I would explain more than I needed to, really. And I definitely had this response with like interpersonal relationships, particularly romantic relationships, where, you know, instead of just saying, hey, I am worried about this thing, can you just clear it out for me? It would be, I'm worried about this thing because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this. I don't want you to think that I'm a horrible person. I don't want you to think that I'm, you know, demanding all this information from you. I'm not trying to control you or anything like that. I just want to understand what's happening where you are, just for peace of mind, you know. That's an example. So like, learning that actually I don't need to tell people these things has been very freeing, and I've been teaching my mum to do this as well with her job. The ways I still do it though are when it comes to like Facebook support groups, where I will put like, hey, I am curious about this thing, or I need help with this thing, or I need to find someone who does this. And I'll put in a bunch of information of backstory and why I need this specifically and not something else. People will latch onto anything but my point. So like, most recent one of this was I was looking at grants and like bursaries and things like that to apply to particularly in regards to like wanting to go back to university. I had one line out of like 3 paragraphs. I was like, I'm worried that I might lose my benefits if I do this course. So I would be out of this much money if that's the case. And instead of anyone actually answering my question of grants or places I could find grants or look into them or request them, everyone was fucking responding to my one-off remark of, oh, I'm worried I might lose my benefits. Another example of this was when I was looking into a nutritionist and maybe like a kind of PT person. I explained my long history with food, health, chronic conditions, to be like, look, this is why I very specifically need someone who's like kind of body neutrality, not diet culture kind of thing. I just want to learn more about food and how it works and what's the best way to, you know, that sort of thing. So I talked about my past with eating disorders. I talked about how I'm currently on steroids because of my chronic conditions, how I have very limited like dietary, I have a limited ability to eat certain foods because of my dietary requirements, and because of my chronic conditions I can't do a lot of exercise, or not the typical kind of like PT exercise that comes to mind. So I need someone who's like comfortable and committed to working with me as an individual with all of these different things. I had one person tell me I shouldn't be on fucking steroids because it won't help weight loss, and I was like, what the fuck? What did you just fucking read? I said I'm on steroids because I'm fucking chronically ill, you dickwad. And then I had about 15 people giving me eating disorder tips. Try this because it won't help, like, you know, it will suppress your appetite. Chew on this instead. And then I also specifically said I don't want a meal plan place like Weight Watchers or what the fuck ever. And I had 15 people recommending Weight Watchers, and I was like, do any of you have reading comprehension? Because clearly not. And none of you like actually listen to what I'm asking for. I was asking for a professional, whether you are one or you know one. I want a professional to help me. Stop giving me your fucking tips on how to stop binge eating. Again, someone also told me how to stop binge eating. I was like, I didn't even say I had a binge eating problem. Okay, so if you didn't realise already, people misunderstanding me is a massive trigger. For me, makes me really angry and very frustrated, because along with like misunderstanding me, people constantly tell me I am being rude. Because I've gone from, I'm no longer explaining a bunch of stuff about myself or using a lot of like fluffy filler words of like, please, do you mind, I hope it's okay. I just say what I mean and like what I want, or I like tell you when it's not appropriate to be asking something of me or it's not relevant. People always call me fucking rude, and it's because I am either putting a boundary in place that they don't like, I'm being direct with what I mean, i.e. not fluffing everything up and making it soft enough for you. And I think it's mainly because people see me as a woman. If I was someone who presented as a man, like a cis man, people would not be calling me fucking rude. And like that really, really enrages me. Why do I have to like jump through 1,500 hoops? Like I'm already jumping through 1,000,000 hoops to make sure people understand me, and they still fucking don't. To jump through further hoops just to not offend anybody by fluffing up words and then still being misunderstood anyway. You know, I'm just trying to conserve some energy by being direct. And like, as a chronically ill person, I don't have a lot of energy, and I definitely don't have patience. But like jumping through all these extra hoops, I already have to jump through a fuck ton already to make sure people understand me, and they still don't. But to then add on like being worried about strangers' feelings when I don't know who these people are and they've asked a question and I have an honest response, either based on research or personal experience, and they call me rude still, and to have fluffed it up to try and avoid like this situation and still be misunderstood. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's very difficult to explain it, but you know, like, what is the point of me wasting all my fucking energy trying to cater to everybody's feelings when they probably will still be offended anyway? I'm tired, bro. So like that kind of neatly goes into learning how to speak to different people to be believed and to be understood. So there's like a very specific way you speak to doctors, okay? So like for an example, the pain scale 1 to 10. I'm like constantly at a 5, and that kind of feels like a 1 to me now. So is it my 10 or like the 10 of like a normal person? Will you believe me if I say 10? Will you believe me if I say off the fucking charts? Because like, if someone asks you 1 to 10 and you're like, 15, they're like, oh, stop being silly, be serious. You're like, I am being fucking serious. I'm in so much pain. Do you see where my frustration lies? So that, yeah, there's like a huge thing about conversing with doctors and medical professionals so that they believe you enough to do tests, to just check some extra things. I mean, my video from like a bit over a year ago, like a year and a half ago, where I talk about that doctor who didn't believe me, I was sobbing in that appointment about how awful my life was at that point in time, and how depressed I was, and how nobody had found a reason for my arm hurting so much, and she still brushed me off and immediately discharged me from her care. Like, she didn't even wait for the one test that she didn't think was even going to come back with anything. So like, she didn't even wait. She just immediately discharged me. And I was crying. I wanted to unalive myself. Like, that's what I was telling her. In front of my gran as well, who was also telling her how awful it is looking and seeing me, a young, what, I think I was maybe 24 at the time, 25-year-old person, suffering so much because nobody had figured out how to help me at that point in time. And she still brushed me off. Thank you very much. Whereas my GP, who sent me to the right people after that happened, he just paid attention to the fact I went, oh, blood pressure cuffs don't work on that arm. He was like, why? I was like, I don't know, they just don't work. And he tried 3 different blood pressure machines, and he had to use a manual, like he had to do it manually basically to figure out my blood pressure in that arm. And he was like, I can barely hear your pulse with my own ears. I think there's something wrong, so I'm gonna send you to vascular. And then I was diagnosed with a fucking rare vasculitis. And when I spoke to my GP about going for ADHD and autism diagnoses, I definitely reverted back to like my trauma response, because especially with a lot of what I've seen of people online and what they've had to do to be believed about needing like an autism and or ADHD assessment, I was very anxious. Even though I have a really good relationship with this doctor, I was still very anxious, and I was just like spieling off this, and I was like kept going. I was like, right, I'm gonna have to stop because I'm just gonna keep going. Why don't people, like, my biggest gripe with all of this is, why don't people listen to the words that come out of your mouth? Why are people putting an intention that is not there behind your words, you know, like, or putting context or subcontext that is not there? Like, peace be with you and also with you. One of my biggest issues that I feel like might have been why it's also taken me so long in some cases to be believed, listened to and understood is not knowing how to describe what's happening to me or what I'm experiencing. This is something that I've read comes along with autism. I'm not sure if it also comes along with ADHD, but having an issue with knowing how to describe a sensation. So like the pain scale is useless and stupid, so it's like, is it stabbing or aching? I don't know, it hurts. And the only reason I now know what any of those like differences are is because I've now experienced them all. Like, oh, is it your joints or your muscles that hurt? Apparently it was both. So like, especially as someone who experiences all of the pains in all of the places, it can be so fucking difficult to pinpoint which pain it is. And it was especially when I didn't understand any of these things. Like, dislocating a rib causes chest pain, but it's not a heart attack chest pain. So then what? What? I was on the phone once to 111, who are like the non-emergency line for like hospital ambulance kind of people in the UK. And I was like, I am in so much pain. I collapsed on the bathroom floor and I've been here for hours crying because I can't breathe and I can't move. It hurts. And they were like, oh, are you having chest pain? I was like, yeah, but it's not that kind of chest pain, but it is chest pain. Because like, I also don't want to then mislead people into thinking I'm having a heart attack when I'm not. Because like, how useful is that? They'll be looking at the wrong place, you know? So it's taken a long time to describe pains I feel, but also like emotions. It took me so long to discover what each emotion feels like to me, but also that, you know, I feel emotions a lot stronger than maybe most people do, which as well was something that was always like picked on by people and ridiculed by people around me, especially in school. I was always too sensitive. You know, I was a drama queen. I was making a big deal out of nothing. I mean, I know these are things that girls always hear anyway as children, but like, yeah, it covered up a lot of my understanding for a really, really long time of how I feel, because nobody helps you understand these things individually. Also, every single time I've been in counselling as a minor, so under the age of 17, the counsellors gaslit me. When I wanted to talk about things that upset me and affected me and were traumatic, they didn't believe me or told me that it was in the past and couldn't change. Or like, when I was particularly young, I described something a family member doing as emotional blackmail, and they said that I was too young to understand what that meant, so that my mum and my gran must have been the ones feeding that kind of rhetoric to me. So even the spaces I was supposed to be able to explore and understand and learn how I feel, they just further gaslit me. And I'm aware this is definitely not rare. This happens all the fucking time, especially in the UK, and especially under CAMS. Fuck CAMS. It took me such a long time to be able to pinpoint any of these things and find the right words. And then, like, my second to last point is kind of more specified on finding the right words. And it's something that I've now understood more in the last, like, year or so, that ADHD, autism, brain fog, fatigue all make it harder to find the right word. So like, no matter how hard I try to word things the way I mean them, sometimes that's just not always possible. And the fact that people don't even listen or believe what I'm saying when I am on point, the times when I'm too tired and unwell, or like just not entirely here, which is most of the time, leads to a lot of shit, especially on the internet, and which I will get more into. But like, the way I was describing it is that you can see the word here, like you can see the word, it's right there, but you can't grasp it. So you kind of go, this word is like almost that word, so hopefully people will understand what I mean. And that's when I have to use fillers of like, this isn't the right word, but it's kind of the word I'm looking for, to try and like safety proof my communications with people, which doesn't always work. But like, it's people say on the tip of my tongue, which doesn't always make sense to autistic and generally neurodivergent people. So like, I feel like you can kind of like almost actually grab the word, like you can kind of see the word, it's a bit translucent, so you can kind of see like maybe the first and last letter and roughly how long it is. You can't like actually grasp it to say it, so you go with the one next to it that's solid and you can like grasp it to say it, you know. So like, hopefully that's a good and easy mental illness, easy to understand metaphor. It do not help that I am dyslexic and slur my words. So yeah, because of that issue, it can lead to problematic words or descriptions, or just not the right word, and people jumping on you for that. I've seen this happen a lot with people I follow on Twitter who are neurodivergent. So like, as someone who's queer and trans, yes, words are really important. They are really important that you do the right thing, say the right thing, use the right pronouns and use people's names, you know, like those are important. But the world is so fucking ableist that we completely ignore the fact that actually a lot of disabilities make it really difficult to be able to grasp these words all the time. Like sometimes it's just, it's slow to change the language. Like autism can make it a lot tougher to change your language, so it can be a slower progress to get there, but it is doable as someone who's had to change so much of my language over the years, because the world just fucking sucks and teaches you the worst ways of saying everything and speaking to and about people. But also like having all of these other conditions that do make it difficult to say the right thing all the time and are dynamic. I'll put a little like, what the fuck is a dynamic condition next to me, because mental illness. But basically when you have conditions that are, you know, like they go up and down with how you're doing, they aren't just a steady I feel shit all the time, or like you're getting a little bit better, or like you're just getting worse, you know, it kind of goes up and down quite drastically. That's dynamic. So when you have dynamic disabilities that all also interact with each other, it's hard to find and say the right words. So for the most part, I just try to shut the fuck up. If I don't know if I'm saying the right word, I don't say it because of how awful some of these experiences I've seen on the internet have been. To add to that as well, I tend to try to not say things that I'm not entirely sure are the right words, because I also just don't want to harm anybody. So like, one of the best ways to prevent harming people is just not doing the thing. So also, whilst protecting myself, it's to protect other people, because as a marginalised person, it is harmful to me when I see people using the wrong words. It's not as simple as just believe people when they say they didn't mean it like that, or it's not as you need to be nice and educate people. But then it is also like, actually, sometimes it is like that, you know. It's just, there's more nuance to this conversation that is just kind of never allowed. So I only say it when I'm in like one-on-one conversations with my friends who understand that I don't mean these like awful words, but that I can't always recollect the right word, which is again why I like to write, because I have time to find the right word. So I'm going to read this thread, which is my last point that I will talk about. So this is from My Cola. I will also put the images here so you can see it. I will try to remember to link their Twitter in the description. This is a recent person I followed, but just some of the things they've said are just so like on point from my experience. I'm just like, I feel seen. So they said the other day, I'm what's known as a good with words autistic person. Not all autistic people take on language as a special interest and focus, but those that do often end up eloquent and compelling. It's because we studied and mastered communication while the rest of you were absorbing it. And the rest of you is actually aimed at neurotypical people, not autistic people. But like, yeah, when I first read it, I thought they meant other autistic people, but it's a bit clearer as it goes on. Why? Because y'all didn't understand us when we express ourselves in ways that are unusual to you. So we work to learn your mannerisms and ways of thinking and speaking, and often it works well, but there's a cost. I'm constantly translating in my head. It takes work. When I am out of spoons, my communication suffers. I start using words or phrases carelessly and opening myself up to miscommunication and misunderstanding. What absolutely sucks though is that with Autistic people, if I'm not translating, no translation happens. It feels bad then when someone misunderstands me. I blame myself because I internalized that it's my fault when I'm not understood. But all of this is just internalized ableism and disability. If I can't work very hard to communicate, I can't communicate. I'd love support. But how do you ask a whole holistic society to ask, what do you mean, instead of how dare you? It's the fact that I get how dare you whenever I'm not doing 100% of the emotional labour around communication that bums me out. And I felt so fucking seen. I felt so seen. And like, this was just like something that added something to this video I was going to make anyway. And like, this whole video is all because I have a special interest in communication and words and language. I love all languages. I love seeing the translations of things. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because I get very excited. You know, I love other languages and I love learning other languages. I'm just like, the translation part, I said this to a friend of mine the other day where who is bilingual. I already feel like I'm translating my own language, English, but I feel like when I'm trying to speak and learn other languages, I'm translating a translation, and it's just so difficult. But like, yeah, so having this special interest in language and speech and how people communicate, that's why I actually got really interested in performing and acting, because you got to experience and see how different communications and relationships played out. And also why I then went on to do a creative writing degree, because I got to create my own stories and see how words made you feel a certain way, and how speech between characters could completely liven up a story, and how sometimes the simplest of phrases have the biggest impact on everything, which is another reason why I cut the fluff a lot of the time from my words, because I want you to feel the impact of what I'm saying. I want you to see, hear, read, understand what I'm saying, and not hear all the extra fluff around it. I want to give you context, but sometimes that is just, one, too much energy, and two, useless. I am at over 40 minutes of recording here. I actually haven't felt this excited and exhilarated about making a video in a while. So I'm very glad I got to make this video about communication, language and talking. And like, I just wanted to shine a light on the different ways communication is different for disabled people. Whether you're a neurodivergent disabled person, physically disabled person, chronically ill person, mentally ill person, because as well, I didn't really touch upon the mental illness aspect of this, but it's in there as well, along with like being believed and not being thrown away into an asylum because you said something slightly wrong once. But yeah, it's just something that really, really fucking hit me in my chronic illness group, support group the other week, that I just felt like I had to make this. So I feel very excited and almost like I've gotten something off my chest. I'm now going to go to therapy. I would really appreciate it if you like this video, because Jesus Christ, did I give a lot of shits about this one. Please subscribe to my channel as well. As I said at the beginning, multiply disabled, multiply marginalised, I am queer, trans. But I also talk about books here too sometimes. Most of the time it's like 50-50. And leave a comment down below. Let me know if, you know, I've maybe shined a light on something that you didn't really think of before, or if I've maybe given you words to your experience. Because for me, a lot of the internet and a lot of people like me talking about these sorts of things have been the reason I've been able to describe what the fuck is happening. Other people got there first and then gave me some words, and I was able to translate them into my experience, you know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me ramble on for a very long time, very excitedly about one of my special interests. Wow! And I will see you next week. Bye.